AASECT certified sexuality educator for the last couple of years. I have been a nude internet model since 2005. I have been a nude and full contact stripper in Portland, Oregon area since 2009. I started making my own porn and doing webcam and other kinds of sex work and fetish work between 2016 and 2020. And I'm always expanding into different types of sex work. The only work I don't do is sugar babying because I am not good at it. I wanted to have a kid in my mid 20s. This was after I had been a nude model for about 6 years and I had been stripping for about 3. My partner at the time wanted to get married. That wasn't so much important to me, but we got married. And yeah, and he's a little bit older than me. So the timing was very purposeful for like where it would fit into my planned career and then my health and the unknown. Well, at this point, I've been a stripper in Portland for 14 years full time, still at it. So at that point, when I had the child, when I had our kid, I was like, yeah, 3 to 6 years in, depending on what I was doing.
It's a robust scene still in the Portland
Not
strip.
as robust as it was pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we love the tourism. So please come back, people. It's still really lively and fun here. I actually just saw a news pop up about Vegas, New York, and then Portland rated first, second, and third for nightlife cities. And Portland, definitely for the small size,
Hmm.
it's pretty unexpected. But even on a Monday or Tuesday, there's still a lot of cool stuff you could see in downtown, like burlesque or fire shows, strippers, acrobatics, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and it's just a different flavor culturally too.
It's 3 hours away, but it's still like the best thing for a 3 hour drive.
Yeah. Do you just also a side note, like do you guys get a lot of Seattle dancers coming down south still in the club that you've
We
noticed?
got quite a bit more that I noticed in the last few years, and people from around like Everett or Tacoma that they just don't have many options for entertainment work to do up there besides bikini barista or stripping. And apparently, one of the same owners owns like a handful of the clubs up there. So if you can't get hired at one, you can't get hired at any of the locations. So a lot of people, yeah, coming down south to us to audition and try their hand at it. So
Yeah.
I'm lucky and grateful I live here, like a 15-minute drive from downtown.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really great city. We're going to dive into a few questions then. How do you find a harmonious balance between your work life and your family life?
There is some semblance of a routine. I I'm autistic. I appreciate routine. I make a lot of lists, and I have a lot of alarms and a couple different calendars in different rooms, but I'm also flexible. So I just try to follow my heart and my energy. Like if it's between like cleaning the garage to get stuff, ready to get put away for the cold, wet seasons which are upon us, versus like going for a long walk with her. It's like, which one do we want to do? If we both don't want to take a walk, even if it's on the calendar, I'm like, we'll do that tomorrow. But like if it's the hottest day of the year, I'm obviously not going to work on the garage. So it's just have a plan, but be flexible.
With the possible variance in income as a creator, how do you plan for the future?
So I save money when it's good, and that's in case I can't save money when it's bad. So I always save. I encourage new entertainers to save. Like some people are 22, 23, 24, making the most money they ever have in their life. I certainly that was the case for me at the time. And some people are still just scraping by. But if you can save anything, $5 a shift, $50 a shift, $500 a week, do that for a year as long as you're stripping, because I do talk to people or whatever kind of work you're doing. If you can save, you absolutely should be saving because you could have an accident or an emergency at any time, or the economy could just stop. Something could change. You could get fired. There could be a global pandemic where the venues close for on and off a year and a half.
Mm.
I was lucky that when things changed so that I couldn't do my primary source of income, which had been strip club work for about a decade, I already had a ring light and a webcam. I was lucky to be well resourced and multifaceted anyway, so that I was able to pivot. And I really, really encourage people to not put all of your eggs in one basket, because if the basket gets destroyed, then you're kind of screwed.
Especially since you do a lot of in-person work. Do you think that there is a little bit more of a disadvantage with in-person versus online these days, especially post-pandemic?
It's interesting because it's so difficult for so many people to get paid with online work anyway, either from things like MasterCard refusing to work with companies, or, Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. They've always been against adult entertainment. It says that in their terms of service, and most banking is like that anyway because of legislation called Operation Choke Point from about 20 years ago. I think it was the Obama era, and I'm not blaming any one administration, because bipartisanship often occurs in the form of sex negativity. So there's a lot of legislation that claims to be in support of kids or family or harm reduction, but it's really just controlling what people can or can't do with their bodies. And that includes sell their sexual services. So a lot of people that I know that couldn't make money online, also because of heavy saturation. A lot of people made OnlyFans accounts, but it's really hard to advertise your OnlyFans if you're shadow banned on Twitter and kicked off of Instagram. So people have limited options. So I've actually noticed and considered in myself more in-person freestyling kinds of work, because cash is still king in this economy for most of us.
What part of your daily routine do you absolutely refuse to give up or compromise on?
So coffee and emails is how I start my day.
Mm.
And my brain feels floaty, and I have no idea what's going on or what day it is. And I feel fearful and afraid if I don't know what's going on in my inboxes by at least 2 p.m. So that's a pretty easy one. If the weather's nice, I'll sit outside with the dog, whether or not the kid's around, but it's either before I wake her up for school or before I pick her up from school or get her from the other parent. It's, yeah, coffee and emails. No matter what time of day I'm waking up, if it's 6 a.m. or 2 p.m., then I'm like right on it.
The coffee thing, is that more of a ritual, or is it also because, with the weather here and how gray and heavy it could be?
I crave the stimulants, I think, sometimes. Like, I've never smoked a cigarette. There's a lot. It's easier for me to say what drugs or narcotics I've done because it's a shorter list. But caffeine definitely helps. But I don't know, because I also buy decaf. So I think it's just the taste.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, if I
Interesting.
don't want the shakes. If I already know I'm going to be nervous for something in the morning, then it's decaf.
So this we're getting all of you right now. This is a
Yeah.
caffeine induced. Do you know other parents who work in adult, and is it important for you to have connections with other parents who can relate?
I do know other parents that work in adult. I do now. When I had a child, I was primarily dancing with a lot of other female people like me, which is college educated, under 30. A lot of people who were looking to be upwardly mobile, but a lot of my coworkers were also nomadic, so either living in their van or working state to state. Most of my coworkers did not have kids. Actually, it was more common for the bartenders in the strip clubs to be parents. So when I was pregnant at work, actually in the club, that was a novelty to a lot of my coworkers. It was really sweet. It was unknown. I didn't show until about like arguably 20 weeks, and I stripped until I was 17. So my pregnancy went 42 and a half weeks because I know when I conceived. So that was almost halfway through my pregnancy. And it was funny because one time we were giving a stage dance to a bachelor or birthday party. And so it was me and like 4 or 5 of my coworkers on stage plus on a person. And I did a move that I'd done so many times before with them where I like laid back on the person, and then something else was about to happen, but I like almost rolled off and kind of fell. And like all my coworkers, because they all knew I was pregnant, they like went to catch me. But now, so fast forward, the child is 11. I'm 36. So it is more common for my coworkers and the people that I'm around to have kids now. I work in a couple more downtown, less suburban clubs. So I interact with different dancers that are also more likely to have been working longer, or people that have different socioeconomic status, so they're working younger. So it's really a mix. One of my favorite coworkers is a decade younger than me, and she has a child about the time that I had a child. And that's something that she says she's bonded with me over because most of her friends her age don't have kids. So it's kind of nice to find community where it is. So it definitely helps. I think it helps the sanity. I think it helps framing. I love talking to parents and sex workers that are older than me, my elders, because younger people have a better pulse on things that are developing that are new to many of us, but older people have seen patterns and themes replicate. So I really encourage finding community where you can.
How do you find that community? Because you have been pretty open about that on your social media, some of your social media pages. But yeah, how do you find out like who's within the parent community and not?
It's probably much more difficult for people who are closeted parents, and there's reasons why people stay closeted for many things. People pretend to be straight, they pretend to be gay, they pretend to be not married, they, not parents because privacy and optimizing their earnings or whatever they want to do with their identity. These are all their choices. So it's not a judgment, but there's reasons people stay closeted, and that can also limit some connections that can be made. So what I notice from my side of it is people reaching out to me who identify or tell me that they are sex workers, they are parents, they don't have that many other people or any other people to talk to, either because they do work alone, either, as escorts or webcammers.
Mm.
Me as a stripper, I go into a dressing room and there's actual like literal other coworkers and peers, which can be, pros and cons that come with that. So I do hear from people that feel isolated because where they live, it's not safe for them to be out as a sex worker. And maybe they work alone or they work online, not with other people. Or they can't even really talk about the work with their partner or the parent of their kid or the family or the other caregivers.
Mhm.
So there's definitely need for community. And I noticed that based on what people approached me with. So I can only notice it from that side, but I do.
Have your experience as an adult influenced your parenting style or approach?
So I read a piece of writing probably 10 years ago, maybe a bit more. And I wish I could remember the exact title, and I wish I could remember where it appeared. It might have been Tumblr, but it was a woman writing that being a sex worker makes her a better parent. That was like a light bulb moment for me. I started doing my own writing based on my own experiences and things I noticed, not to plagiarize someone, but to offer in a different and relatable context to other people, because that's the other thing, like messaging that's important, we need so much of it. So we need more sex educators, we need more artists, we need more people talking about harm reduction. We should boost each other up and refer to each other and cite our sources. I wish I could remember the author. It might actually not be on the internet anymore. So in the light bulb moment, I realized that what I read made me feel better about myself and made me realize some of the skills I had gained. So this might be in multitasking. So like listening for your child while preparing food. This could look like listening for your tip meters to go off or paying attention to who's going to the ATM while you are performing touching yourself dancing. So multitasking, having an awareness, time management with clients, with child, hygiene skills, and just knowing what things I need, what things I don't need, what works for me, developing my own personal style and integrity. So again, just because something works for one creator or one parent doesn't mean that I need to copy it or that it works in my situation. So just lots of parallels in dealing with people and self-care skills. Um, so the more I've talked about this, the more, again, I've heard from other people, like, I only know Asa Akira, of, Wicked and now Pornhub, because she reached out saying that a piece of my writing about parenting had influenced how she was going to approach parenting when she, I believe, was pregnant or a new mother with her first.
Mhm.
So that is just, how humbling and inspiring and touching, and what a reminder that we need to keep writing, I want to keep learning. And also a lot of people in our age group, older millennials, Gen Z, we don't want to replicate the mistakes our parents did, just like our parents wanted better than what they had. So if we keep talking with each other, we can identify what those issues were. And social media and content creation has been really largely helpful for that, besides writing, old-fashioned writing, paper, books and things, zines.
Yeah. And is that something that you attempt to do through even your social media pages, is openly share like how you are applying that to your parenting approach?
Yes, I do that. I do that on social media. I do it more intentionally in podcast. So I host They Talk Sex podcast, so that we can all have happier, safer sex lives. And sometimes that includes parenting, um, or healing our relationships with our parents or our caregivers, or understanding like why they fucked up and what they thought they were doing. And it probably makes me lose money in some instances from people that are like, ew, thinking about kids is a turnoff for me, which it should be. But now I can't differentiate, and I don't want to engage with this person in a sexual fantasy realm anymore and give them my money or time. I
Mm.
understand that is a thing that happens. This is, again, one reason why some adult content creators stay closeted as parents, because it's not going to help them and it's not relevant to whatever they're making or doing. So in my case, I feel like a way that I can be most authentic and grounded and happy and productive in what I can offer to the world is to share. So in that process, I definitely lose some money, but again, like I gain resources and community and network, like I mentioned, Asa, Akira, or just other people that I looked up to in sex education, and now I'm working alongside them, was because I was honest with my life and my practices.
Yeah. Was that an easy decision to arrive at, to share like the very first thing that you shared, the very first time that you shared about parenting and your child? And do you feel like the risk outweighs the benefits, as far as from the creator's standpoint anyway, and their dynamic with their fan base?
Yeah, it will totally depend on the creator and so many things. I It's funny because I'm now realizing the way in which things worked out. I did not anticipate being a strip club worker, a stripper, for so long, because when I started working in the strip club, like to go back further, I always knew I liked sex and sexuality and masturbation and touching and feeling good and in my body in those ways. But when I started being a nude model, I didn't think, what's my long-term approach? I just thought, I want to look good and show it in a way. I want to be like the people I'm seeing, and I could make money from this. Not very much, but cool. So it was definitely a form of expression and validation for a person who did not feel secure in their body yet, not like I do now. And then when I started stripping, I really thought that would be 6 months at the most. I thought I would go back to a normie conventional job in retail or healthcare. And I just really fell in love with stripping. So at that point, I didn't think to myself, like, what will my children think? Because I hadn't actually thought that far about having children. And then when
Right.
I was 25 and graduated college, I'm like, now would be a good time. Well, I guess I'll figure out how I explain things to them. And that's when I started seeing and reading other sex work writing, which came at a really good time because it was the Tumblr era of 2010, 2011. I had her in 2012.
What are your feelings around having a conversation with your child about your chosen industry or occupation? And around what age do you feel it'd be ideal to do so for you?
I started explaining what I did for work in very age appropriate ways at a very young age. So, sex educators will tell you, queer educators will tell you, trauma educators will tell you, it's not like you have one conversation once and then your kids know everything, but talking about issues are a series of conversations that should be age appropriate. So, what does that look like for age appropriate? So, when she was about 3, 4, 5, I told her that daddy makes shoes and that mommy dances for people for money. She had seen street vendors and or like spangers and buskers, people playing music or doing street performance, hustling for tips. So I'd give her $1 and she'd toddle up and, give the person playing the guitar the money, and she felt good about it. And I said, that's essentially what people do for me. They like seeing my beautiful dancing and my interesting body and my colorful hair, and they get excited and happy. So they give me $1.
That's a great analogy. That's a great way to frame it.
Thank you. And then when she liked that idea, and that was easy. I said her dad makes shoes. He worked for a corporate shoe company in a up high, very serious position, which is wrought with all of the, conversations about ethics and capitalism and things. But like, again, she's 3 or 4. So dad makes shoes. And then when she got older, it was mommy also hugs people and talks to them for money. And she thought that was cool and fine too, because she understands hugging and talking and needing company. Interestingly enough, we were playing a game. We were playing in the yard, and I think she was about 5 or 6, and she was pretending to be a dragon who was offering me some dandelions for sale. And in exchange for the dandelions, I could get 2 hugs or 3 kisses. So she has me picking dandelions to give to her, and she'll give me a hug or a kiss. And I asked this little kid, I was like, why do the hugs, I think it was the hugs. I said, why do the hugs cost more dandelions? And she says, the hugs last longer.
Ah,
I was like, wow, you're doing some kind of qualitative math in your brain about your labor for dandelions. So like, I'm not teaching her to be any such way. She is noticing the transactional nature and approach of things in our world. We trade or we offer money for food or services. So as she's gotten, again, older, she's 11 now, I got a sweater in the mail. You get swag from the platforms. She asked me what is that, Pornhub? And I said pornography is video or audio of people having sex or being sexual. People do it for fun or money.
mhm.
I said, like how on YouTube people do things for fun or money, like eating competitions or popping zits or the milk crate challenge. She's like, oh, okay. So that was a really easy thing for her to understand too. So again, she's a preteen. Kids see pornography by the time they're teenagers anyway. Now she'll have an understanding of what I'm seeing is people doing sexual things for fun or money. This is entertainment. And it's really important that kids understand that what they see in media is not often real life, but for entertainment, either for fun or money. And so that starts the conversations about what we do with our own bodies for fun or money as you get older. But consent is a huge part of the conversation. And I hope that's been helpful to give some kind of layout to how you can slowly roll this stuff out to your kids, which is a heck of a lot different than what some people do to try to punish their family or their friends who make media, which is outing them. Like when people freak out about things that are actually very normal, there's a ton of shaming that goes on. So if someone were to say in a few years, worst case scenario, somebody wants to attack my daughter's well-being or my well-being and send her imagery of her mother, at the very least, it's not a surprise it exists.
Yeah. And, everyone is going to have different approaches to this and comfort levels. But do you have any advice for maybe other parents who maybe they were raised differently and they have perhaps their own stigmas that they're working through in terms of approaching these conversations with their kids? Do you have any general advice for them as far as how to kind of navigate that?
So thank you for asking that, because most parents are not certified sex educators. Why would you know all this stuff if nobody showed it to you? So keep it simple. And if you don't know, say, I don't know, but let's find out. And then there's some great websites. There's amaze.org, if I can mention them. There's scarletine.com. These are online free resources for parents and teenagers. Any book by Corey Silverberg is probably great. Though I have those range in age, and I have a ton of those for her, and she actually looks at them. So keep it simple. And I don't know, but we can find out. And also, this can include, I need some time to think about this because no one's ever asked me this before. Like if your kid says, how are babies made? You can be like, you know what? I need some time to think and look it up because I've actually never explained this before.
Great advice. Last question, expectation versus reality. What's one truth about parenthood that you would tell your pre-parent self?
This one doesn't relate to sex so much, but it does relate to consent and safety. You will accidentally hurt your child and your child will accidentally hurt you. Forgive yourself, heal, and move on. This can look like the first time you accidentally pinch their skin in the car seat and they scream. What a terrible feeling. Have other people been there? Yes. You're not the worst parent in the world, but this is how we learn to pay attention and take ownership for, the fact that adults make mistakes. Okay. Or your kid is going to scratch you or bite you when they're chest feeding or you're changing their diaper. Don't take it out on them. Don't take it personal. It was either an accident or they're distressed. So these are things I have found to be true and I have witnessed with friends. This is different than using hitting to so-called discipline your child. There is no parenting organization that holds water that recommends hitting. And usually people hit their kids because they're frustrated and they don't know what else to do. So differentiating between accidents happen versus hitting is not discipline.
Where can people follow you on your work-related pages or otherwise if they want to get more info?
Yeah, so find me ellstanger.com. That's my name. My podcast is They Talk Sex podcast on Spotify and Apple and theytalksex.com. And I am very shadow banned on Twitter at Elle Stanger. And I think you can still find me on Instagram at stripperwriter. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much, Elle.